Hello everyone, I'm Leon Bibb, and welcome to my Ohio. You know, I was raised here, went to school here, married here, raised my family here. So come with me on a journey because I'm going to show you some interesting people in some interesting places, all of which make my Ohio my home. And just like all of you who call Ohio home, the Buckeye State holds a special interest in our hearts. Cleveland, my hometown, so come along on the journey. In downtown Cleveland, there is a sense something is happening. Cleveland has found a firmer footing again. Maybe not every step, but City Hall believes Cleveland is moving in a good direction. Not only the Horseshoe Casino, but other things too.
Oh boy, you got it spot on.
It is Chris Warren's job to keep up with the development. He is a longtime City Hall official, now the city's chief of regional development. He believes the new casino is vital, but it is the casino and other projects which are setting the stage.
But tied to a new convention center, medical mart, 98% occupancy of our housing downtown, new housing development.
His list goes on for a while longer, mentioning points in downtown, flats, and waterfront areas. As well, the group Positively Cleveland, which has the job of promoting Cleveland to the world, announced a 5-year plan to boost city tourism. Certainly the casino will help, but even before, Cleveland was seeing economic growth, especially downtown.
We are going to see millions of new visitors coming into our city and our county, and each one of those visitors spends money and creates jobs in Cleveland.
More steel and concrete are reaching skyward in the city, creating not just a feeling of newness, but also fueling a spirit. Positively Cleveland has tried to capture it in a pictures and sound campaign aimed to the rest of the world.
Come on! Yeah. That's right, y'all.
It is growing out of the soil of an old neighborhood, a metal structure changing a Cleveland corner. The construction crew muscles in the heavy work, catching the gazes of drivers passing through the area, wondering what gives here. The job is as big as several football fields. As the machinery pushes through, workers are probing the earth, knowing there is a neighborhood change coming.
This is a very large investment into the community. It's certainly a different type of project.
This plot of Eastside Cleveland land at the corner of Kinsman Road and Grand Avenue near East 55th Street is being readied for urban farming. But under a glass-like structure, being sown are the seeds of a greenhouse to stretch more than 3.5 acres. Generations ago, this area was heavily industrial, with some houses mixed in. Most industry pulled out decades ago. Most of the people left the houses. This is the old sweater mill right there?
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
highlighted in blue.
Many properties were consolidated, and Green City Growers Cooperative moved in. It brings what will be a greenhouse to grow 3 million heads of lettuce and 300,000 pounds of herbs each year for grocery stores, institutions, and food distributors. It is also growing jobs.
Not only do we have the orchids in here, but other things like the lantana and ferns.
Welcome to the tropics of Lorain County in its Metro Parks Miller Nature Preserve. Since it opened in 2011, this paradise, quietly nestled in a corner of Avon, has bloomed with tropical plants peeking out.
They're beautiful.
To say the least. At this nature preserve, you will find groups of strolling flower people. No one in a hurry. Here also are desert settings. The accent is on long, leisurely looks at nature's offering.
It's lovely. The beautiful sized orchids. Every Tuesday I can't wait to come and see what's different, you know, what's blooming now.
The rose hydrangea is blooming, and that's new. There's been several cacti that bloom. We see the bud and we're all excited about it.
Temperature and humidity controlled as daylight streams through this house of glass. For such structures, this was a capital of sorts. Years ago, the Lorain-Cuyahoga Counties area was known as the glass greenhouse capital of the world, boasting acres of tomatoes under glass. Well, no tomatoes here, but yes, we have your bananas. Every year, Cleveland looks upward for the Cleveland National Air Show, where planes lift off from Burke Lakefront Airport, one of only a few of its kind. It is really a mainstay in Cleveland.
Burke relieves Hopkins of the smaller aircraft, which makes Hopkins on-time performance, which is important to passengers there, one of the best in the country.
Cleveland Director of Ports, Ricky Smith, in charge of Hopkins International and its little brother Burke Lakefront Airport, sings praises of the runways nestled along the shoreline of Lake Erie. Burke is more of a business or charter flight airport. For years, there have been calls for Cleveland to close Burke and develop its 500 acres another way, feeling it is prime real estate better suited for something else. But Smith feels the airport is prime too.
What's not recognized there is the importance of general aviation, corporate aviation, flying schools. You know, those are all important aspects of not just aviation, but they're important to the economy. And Burke plays that role.
Burke Lakefront's calling card is business. During overnight hours, canceled checks from around the country for the Federal Reserve Bank are flown into Cleveland. Anytime, medical patients and organs for medical transplant are flown into Burke.
If we add those operations to Hopkins, it would severely slow the traffic there, and that would be costly to the region.
Burke Lakefront was built in 1948. The land it is built on is fill, which was trucked in. Long ago, Lake Erie waters came in this far. But generations ago came the idea of a downtown airport hugged up to the Lake Erie shoreline. Some of the places that make my Ohio home. But it's not just the places, it's also the people. People come in all shapes and sizes and colors. People are the fabric of each community. Each one of us offers something unique. Like the people I've met in my travels through my Ohio. You'll meet some of them next. A community wouldn't be a community without its people. People make up a family, a neighborhood, a city, a state. We're all one. In my travels throughout Ohio, I meet fascinating people, people with stories to tell, people who leave an imprint. His is a tough job leading the Cleveland Catholic Diocese. Since 2006, when Richard Lennon was assigned as bishop in Cleveland, there has been controversy and questions, much of it centered on his order to close many low-attendance Catholic churches. From Boston, he did it there too, even closing, in his words, his own parish. Years later, he acknowledged the Cleveland closings pained many, including him.
So many significant events have happened in people's lives in a church building. I mean, that's where they may have been baptized, or they made their first communion. I know a lot of people are not pleased, and yet the vast majority, because of their faith, have continued on in new settings.
Ordained a Catholic priest in 1973, Bishop Lennon of the Cleveland Diocese spoke of what first inspired him to walk the steps of a priest.
When I realized that God was asking me to be a priest, then it was my task to embrace it. And I believed that at 18 and 20 years old.
He is steeped in the church. His assignment to Cleveland came from the Pope. The Vatican asked Richard Lennon to go to Cleveland. And interestingly, under the same roof of St. John Cathedral is the mortuary, burial spot for Cleveland bishops. Hours before Bishop Lennon officially took the Cleveland position, a nun showed this place to Richard Lennon's family.
And she took them in here, and she said, and that's where they're going to bury him.
That's your spot.
No, I hadn't even taken over. And it was decided that's where I was going.
Well, how does it feel to look at that spot?
Well, at least I know where I'm going to be.
At the Western Reserve Historical Society, many delve into the past. Always available, old newspapers help set our stage. But it is genealogical research which tugs at us.
That's my dad.
A census shows my father in Cleveland long before my birth. I knew Dad had traveled from Alabama, arriving at Cleveland's railroad station at Terminal Tower. Research shows Dad moved to a now abandoned East 86th Street house, next door to where Daniel Jackson now lives. My father's uncle and aunt, Jim and Cora Bibb, lived in this house. When my father came to Cleveland in 1940, they took him in. He got his start right here. The 1940 census shows everyone who lived in this house. Through my father, this house is in my bloodline. Story of the census, but really of genealogy. Through research, each of us can walk into the past, searching for footprints of those who have gone before. Census writings on the computer spill out pathways to the past, perhaps leading us to old houses where important lives were lived long, long ago. An old saying, a drawing is a line going for a walk. Here the artist walks, a familiar path. He knows the way. If his face is not familiar, perhaps the faces of his friends are. Friendly images flow from the tip of the pen of Tom Baddock, cartoonist.
This is the most important part of cartooning, making the boxes.
A cartoonist's joke. What is important is writing and drawing from the heart. Tom Baddock does that with precision. He is the art, wit, and words behind the newspaper comic strips Crankshaft and Funky Winker Bean. Baddock's comics are in 700 newspapers. From his studio, nestled in a corner of Medina County, Baddock ties his artistic magic to lives you and I live.
They're only about a quarter-inch move from real life, so it doesn't take much. It's like Westview High School. My high school was Midview. I turned it into Westview, and I'm off and running.
This Northeast Ohio land yields promises of things to come. The land is a most unusual plot at Huff Avenue and East 66th Street, in the heart of Cleveland's inner city Huff neighborhood. The Vineyards of Chateau Huff was begun by neighborhood resident Mansfield Frazier.
This is an urban farming project. It may be grapes, but it's still, it's still urban farming. I see it as renewing inner city neighborhoods to create wealth in inner city neighborhoods. We've got land. It's aesthetically pleasing. And so, and I've got the young kids that might act out, those 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they all work for me.
The neighborhood supports idea of this 3/4 of an acre boasting 300 grapevines, half Frontenac, half Traminette. He figures grapes will yield 3,000 bottles. A year ago, vines were taller, but not mature enough for the harvest yet. Frazier cut them back. Pruning strengthens the grape for the longer run. The people of Ohio, we all bring something unique to the table. But where would we be without those who came before us? Our roots, our history. When we come back, a look at what shaped our history at this place we call home. His name was Moses Cleveland, the man credited with helping settle this community. This log cabin marks the spot where Cleveland and a group of surveyors from the Connecticut Land Company arrived, coming off the Cuyahoga River in 1796. They actually paced out the 9.5 acres that would become the public square of Cleveland, naming the community after their leader, Cleveland. From those humble beginnings, our history began to unfold. If there is an iconic image of Cleveland, it is this, the Terminal Tower. For generations, it has cast a long shadow on downtown's public square. Oldest of the skyscrapers in Cleveland. Younger upstarts have come along, bigger, broader shouldered, but the old Terminal Tower is still spry on its feet. It is the older brother who still has moves it boasted when it was the only kid on the block.
52 stories in this building.
They hadn't planned to go that far as high, at one point.
No, the original plans for this building was only a 15-story building.
As the building's general manager, Stephen Burr knows every turn of the building. Today, you will venture into some corners not open to the public. But with me, I'll get you in to the private living quarters of the two brothers who built Terminal Tower. Oris Paxton and Mantus James Van Swearingen were railroad-owning brothers. In 1927, they envisioned a place for trains to rumble in. Public Square was mostly small buildings, so the brothers bought them and cleared the land for their tower. And they lived in their Cleveland Tower.
There actually was 2 bedrooms up here, one for each one of the brothers. Again, they never married, never had children, so this was their living quarters.
When the building was completed in 1930, it was Cleveland's only one scraping the sky.
If you were looking out this window right here, right down to Euclid Avenue, you would have saw all the trains and the trolleys tracks that were down Euclid Avenue at that time.
The Van Swearingen brothers were visionaries, builders of the Cleveland Rail Line linking Shaker Heights, which they developed. But the terminal was the brothers' gemstone. for years tallest in the world outside New York City. So on the 12th, 13th, and 14th floors, they made it plush enough for home. It was an autumn Cleveland day when horses clip-clopped up this hill, pulling a hearse bearing the body of the murdered president. Cleveland's Lakeview Cemetery. In 1881, Cleveland area-born President James Garfield had been assassinated, his body brought here. In this structure is the resting place of a president.
President Garfield's casket is the only presidential casket is on what we call full display. You can see the casket on a beautiful platform. All other presidents are either buried in the ground or in some type of structure.
On this day, among the visitors is a youngster and his parents. The Garfield Monument was mentioned in school. He came to see for himself. Tell me why you think it's important to study history.
Because it was our country's past.
The world's first billionaire, John D. Rockefeller, is buried here. A monument stands over the family burial spot. Legend has it, leave money at Rockefeller's gravestone and wealth will find you. Well, we'll go along. Money left here goes to charities. Another burial spot with a legend is that of Ray Chapman, the only Major League Baseball player to die directly from the game. Playing for the 1920 Cleveland Indians, a pitched ball caught him in the head. Chapman died that day. In tribute, Cleveland fans raised money for the gravestone. Since 1920, mysteriously, baseball items regularly appear at Chapman's gravesite. Even today. Malabar Farms, now a state park. Years ago, when novelist Louis Bromfield owned it, his friendship with so many Hollywood stars brought them here, where dozens of stars stayed. Among them, Tyrone Power, also a huge star. Humphrey Bogart and Tyrone Power are gone. Lauren Bacall is now 88. Film keeps them all with us.
What'd you do that for?
I'm wondering whether I'd like it.
What's the decision?
I don't know yet.
Their sons tell stories of the other sides of the stars' lives. Story also of Malabar Farms, which was a get-away-from-it-all haven.
They were really Hollywood people, but they loved the Midwest as well.
Malabar Farms was special for the stars, special now for the sons.
This is a snapshot of who we were as a people in 1945.
It was at author Louis Bromfield's home where Bogart and Bacall actually married.
After the brief 3-minute ceremony, the new Mrs. Bogart remembers to toss her bridal bouquet.
As my mother said, somebody had visited Malabar and saw that the beds were separate and asked my mother what they did. And my mother said, we pushed them together.
Now a state park, the Malabar Farmhouse needs restoration. So there is a fundraising effort. Bogart and Power, the sons, have brought their names to woo in the dollars, hoping to restore the house to its 40s, 50s splendor.
I mean, this doesn't exist anymore. When you let something like this go, you are cutting off our history.
These gates used to be at the White House in Washington, but when Ohio's Rutherford B. Hayes left the U.S. presidency in 1881, the White House bought new gates, so Rutherford brought the old ones to Fremont and put them in his yard. It is now the Rutherford B. Hayes Presidential Center.
His house is here, he's buried here, his library, presidential library is here, and it's all on his estate.
This is a sprawling piece of land in Sandusky County. From here, Hayes went to the Civil War, where he was wounded 5 times and hailed a hero. Back in Fremont, Ohio elected him 3 times to the governor's post. So in 1876, Republican leaders boasted he was a leader. Somebody said, Rutherford, you ought to run for president. Well, that election of 1876 sounded a lot like that of 2000, when Bush and Gore fought over the Florida vote count. Same thing with Republican Hayes and Democrat Tilden of New York. Votes counted and recounted, and arguments heated and heightened for 3 months.
It took an electoral commission to be appointed to decide who got the votes.
The 19th century custom for any president was to pay some of his keep in the White House. Hayes bought his carriage to get around Washington. Uncle Sam did not pay for a president's ride.
They were provided with a stable, but they had to pay for the food, they had to pay for the grooms and all that sort of thing for their horses.
Even at the White House, the government did not put food on a president's table.
They had to pay for all the meals
Even if they had a state dinner, they paid for that. They paid for the servants in the White House.
But he was Mr. President, having won by one electoral college vote. He had been the non-campaigner who stayed home on his front porch sipping lemonade while his supporters went about the country talking him to victory. Those who came before us helped shape who and what we are today. I'll have some final thoughts on My Ohio when we come back. I hope you enjoyed this quick journey through My Ohio. I'll continue to bring you stories on air and online. If you have a suggestion for a My Ohio segment, you'll find my email at the bottom of my website stories on newsnet5.com. For My Ohio, I'm Leon Bibb. Thanks for watching.